In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern where we look to see cold air prevailing basically indefinitely. We don't really know when the end will be. For that, we're not quite certain of that yet, but we know that the cold is going to last quite a while. We have our initial snowstorm coming to an end right now. I did see flakes, by the way, that will be in the vlog that's coming up soon. You guys can check out the vlog channel. I think it's if you hit my logo on the bottom left of the video, you can head to the channel and it should be up there in the banner if you guys are curious about that. It's called Ashton Blue is the channel. That's my name, of course. We're also going to be tracking another potentially major snowstorm, even blizzard. The models have been back and forth on this one. I want you guys to be aware that we have seen flip-flopping. It's looking like some days we see the models come out and it's for like the southern mid-Atlantic, like my neck of the woods, like Virginia, maybe even northern North Carolina getting the snow. And then every couple model runs, then we'll see them switch to showing something that rides right up the coast and more targets the mid-Atlantic into southern New England as a major blizzard. We're going to be showing you guys something a little different today. I'm going to show you every single GFS model run that I have available to me, which is the past 4. And we're going to compare where it had that low set up so you guys can see the changes kind of on screen. But right now they're showing the blizzard still, and it's getting closer. So confidence is increasing that we could have a major snowfall event that we've been calling for over a week. So let's take a look here first off at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. And this is for January 11th through the 15th. So a pretty long-term outlook here, kind of like the medium to long range. We do see the cold still expected to prevail, especially in this southeast corridor. Also kind of extending back to the Four Corner states. And we're starting to cool down out west where it's not looking quite as warm as things once were. Most of the warmth actually being over the upper Midwest, northern plains, and Alaska, as you can see, very warm, as well as Hawaii. Very, very warm over the next 11th through 15th time frame. Here's the precipitation, and we do see that the model, well, not the models, the Climate Prediction Center is showing an increase of precipitation in these areas, which could indicate they do expect the chance of this storm to ride up the coast, because these are the exact areas that would be most impacted by a coastal system such as that. We do see some drier conditions here for areas that just saw their snowstorm, an ice storm. And then for the west coast, very, very dry, as well as pretty wet across some of the Rockies and plains here, as you can see. That's another area we've been watching for some above average activity. As we take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, which will cover the 13th through the 19th time frame, we do expect the cold air to prevail in these areas. Still warm for the upper Midwest and northern plains, but we do see some more cooling trends out west, and this, if it continues to expand, could be what eventually shuts down this frigid air in the east. And again, that would be likely as we're approaching the 20th, so we would still see the first 2/3 of January being very, very cold. We're going to take a look at what January's looked like so far in just a moment. When we look at the precipitation, a little drier along the East Coast during this time frame. Still the Plains and Rockies, though, doing quite nicely, and still quite dry along the West as well. When we look at the 3 to 4 week outlook, which hasn't changed in a while, we see these updated every Friday, so we'll see an update soon, but they do expect the cold to continue for the 18th through 31st time frame. But because, again, we have that fork in the road, this is, of course, what it looked like back on the 3rd, but we've seen 3 days of new model runs, and I think that they might back off from this a little bit, is my initial assessment. But again, it's been 3 days. We could see another 3 days go by, and then all of a sudden, the narrative kind of flips again. So time will tell, but as of right now, if today was Friday and they were updating it, I would say they would shift this a little bit less cold in the east and a little bit less warm in the west, but we'll see what they end up doing. When we look at the precipitation, they do show an increase of, again, activity during in kind of the eastern areas here with some coastal systems perhaps, maybe a few more inland storms. So that would obviously, if combined with the cold, lead to quite a bit of snowfall opportunities, you could imagine. Also, the Northwest is seeing more activity during this time frame, but again, a little outdated from when it was issued, so time will tell. Their overall monthly outlook looks a lot like how it's gone, and also a lot like how we expect it to go, at least over the next 14 days. So, I really like this outlook. I think this is pretty spot on. And then here's the precipitation outlook. Wetter in the Northwest and the Northeast, with pretty dry along the southern four corner states and southern plains. Maybe that's going to end up being wrong for Texas and Oklahoma because, again, they are expecting wetter conditions for a while here. As far as how January has gone so far, this is the past 5 days. So we're missing the first day of January here, but we can see that the Arctic has really just unleashed cold air straight through the northern plains and upper Midwest and into these mid-Atlantic and southeast areas. A little warmer for the Northeast. We've had kind of a negative NAO pattern, which is typically some positive temperatures, some higher pressure as well in these areas of eastern Canada, more particularly like Greenland as well, the areas between Canada and Greenland. And sometimes when it's a very far negative NAO, what it does is it starts to expand some of that warmth and high pressure even into the northeast, even in through a lot of eastern Canada, and we've seen that taking place. Positive PNA, which stands for Pacific North American Oscillation, is really just, by definition, warmer temperatures along the western areas of North America. And when we have these two anomalies kind of coupled together, the negative NAO, the positive PNA, it just shoots the cold air right in between, and we see that it's filling the gap here. It really has nowhere else to go. So this has been the perfect storm, no pun intended, for colder temperatures to really just prevail throughout these areas where we've seen it. So we'll keep you guys up to date with this. Tomorrow we'll be able to show the 7-day one, but I don't want to include December. It was quite warm, so it doesn't really show how January's gone because December 31st was quite warm. But we're going to walk through this coming up soon and through the rest of the month. When we look at our GFS model, here's our first snowstorm that's coming to an end. We're going to see that one, obviously, come to an end. We're going to see the colder temperatures really just prevail. I mean, here's Tuesday the 7th. Here's Wednesday the 3rd, or the 8th, better yet. Continued cold. And then right around Thursday the 9th is when we start to see snowstorm number 2 get going. And it's going to basically be two main factors, both of which being some moisture. Some of it's coming from the Pacific over top of Mexico straight into the storm. And we see the Gulf of Mexico really infusing this storm. So it has a lot of moisture to work with. It's going to be possibly a very amped up storm. All of this energy and moisture getting infused into the system very early on sets it up for a very major trajectory potentially. So we'll be watching for that. The other main factor is that we do have plenty of cold in the central and eastern states around this time frame. So that's going to allow for it to be not just a storm, but a snowstorm, of course. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas seeing some snowfall by Thursday afternoon, perhaps just 80 hours from now. So confidence is rising for this. By the time we reach Friday, less than 5 days away, we see the system moving towards the panhandle of Florida, snowfall throughout the Ohio Valley, Midwest, deeper south areas as well, like North Carolina, South Carolina, northern Georgia, northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, Tennessee as well, seeing snowfall with this one early on. As we head further into this system, what we see is it moves over top of Georgia. So some of our original, like yesterday, the one I showed was a deeper south kind of strike where it was offshore. We've seen it shift kind of like 25, 50 miles further towards the coast and even onto the coast. So we see it here yesterday. It was more along the line. And this causes the snow to be a little bit more north-based, obviously. But not only that, some ice, maybe another ice storm here for the Carolinas into Virginia. Also the Smoky Mountains seeing plenty of ice. I know that would be terrible for everybody who was devastated by Helene earlier last year. Ice, I can imagine, is even worse than snow in a situation where everybody's trying to rebuild and you know, even more so problematic. People that don't even have a home right now. I mean, this is all just devastating. So really, really hoping that's not the case for them. Let's take it towards Saturday afternoon. What we see happening is that this is right over the Chesapeake Bay, giving me rain, of course, womp womp. I want this to be a little bit offshore for me, but, you know, I'm very happy for you guys. I feel like I'm more passionate about talking about these things overall and than I am about, you know, my own biases and seeing the storm for myself. But I do wish I could see snow with y'all, especially since I basically missed out on the first one, but I'll live either way. We do see snowfall really, really heavily for now the Smoky Mountains. So it's like ice and then snow. I've seen a lot of snow and then ice, which is really problematic when you get the, you know, like 6 or 8 inches of snow and then you get like a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of ice on top. It's like you can walk on it, but this is the other way around. Some ice underneath, which would make driving terrible. If we see freezing rain and then the snow kind of just on top, that's going to make it like impossible to plow properly, I could imagine. Heavy snowfall for Northern Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. But remember what I said earlier. We have seen this model, in particular the GFS, flip-flopping back and forth. As of now, the European model does not side with this more northern and coastal storm. It's still looking like how the GFS looked yesterday, which is much more of like a North Carolina, Virginia storm. Personally, if it was only up to me and I was all that mattered, I would want it to be the European solution because I do get some snowfall in that one. The GFS one, not so much, but this would overall be a more problematic and more major storm, this solution. Once it moves off into this area, south of Long Island, offshore of New Jersey, offshore of the Delmarva, that's when it really takes off. So we see it at like a 993 here, already a quite strong storm, but over the hours after that, 986, just 3 hours later, very, very quick intensification. Virginia, Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City in there, as well as like the rest of southern New York, into southern New England, down to a 979 by 7 p.m. on Saturday, just a few hours after being a 993. So we're seeing rapid dropping of pressure here. And then 3 hours later, still a 969, or was it? No, it was a 979. So it's a 969, down 10 millibars in 3 hours. And we see New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, the Delmarva, still DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia, and then into southern New England. New York City getting slammed, Long Island as well, with a 969 major blizzard, basically, if this solution took place. If it drops that quick in pressure, it's down to 969, you can imagine the winds would be going crazy. And we can see on screen here, this model is calling for extremely heavy snowfall. So this would be a widespread major blizzard if that occurred. Of course, that's a big if, because again, we've seen it flip-flopping around, which we're going to show you in just a moment. So let's keep going. We see it really dropping down to a 964 before kind of moving directly offshore. This is like, no pun intended, it's definitely not perfect, it's problematic, but it is the perfect storm because it moves up, it stays offshore, and typically a storm on this trajectory would go through New England and bring rain and mixed precipitation. But it wants to curve, like right before going over land and do this. That curvature brings longer time of snowfall for especially this corridor right in here, right near that elbow in the track. Because as it's turning, it has to slow down, change trajectory. It just keeps the low in the area longer. And that would even more so increase the actual time that you're seeing heavy snowfall. Really, really problematic stuff. So you can see that playing out here. Again, almost directly northward, and then almost directly eastward there. And then let's just hover around, eventually moving out. And then what we're left with is a cold but quite dry pattern. We talked about a potential third snowstorm yesterday, and that would be this area of energy here by Tuesday the 14th beginning to develop. We will, of course, be watching this. The models kind of leave it behind on today's runs, which we do expect a roller coaster, but it really just stays down there. That it never interacts with the jet stream, and it's never able to get that pull to the north or the east for that matter. It kind of just wants to stick around. If you remember, with the potential major blizzard, or if not, kind of at least decent mid-Atlantic snowstorm, that storm was showing up as a major blizzard, again, 8 days ago, went away for days. It seemed like it wasn't even going to happen. Just like this, it got left behind, and then now, as we're within like 5-6 days, the models are picking back up on it again. And I don't know which video, and I don't know when in the video from those days when I was talking about it, but I did mention to you guys that I wouldn't be surprised to see it go away and then come back. That happens all the time. Throughout my experience in tracking these models and storms, that is a very frequent thing. And it doesn't happen every time, but it's just always needs to be acknowledged as a possibility. I feel like if a model's showing a storm, everybody says that's not going to happen. And then the second a model stops showing a storm, everybody's like, oh, it's gone, not going to happen. The models don't show it, so it's obviously not going to happen. But you kind of have to pick a side. Are the models good or the models bad? Because it seems like people only, I don't know why people have such a negative, they don't want snow or something. I don't really know what it is, but I feel like anytime a model shows warmth, everybody's like, yep, model's spot on. Every time a model shows cold, oh, that's not going to happen. But it doesn't matter, which side of the coin it's on. The models are wrong and right randomly, and you never really know when it is. But yeah, that's just a little spiel for you guys today. You guys know I tend to do that a little bit. We do get a bit of a clipper system, and this one's weird because typically, I mean, they come down from Alberta and cross, straight through. This one follows the jet stream, of course, but it kind of goes down, or actually it does it a little further east than that. It goes down like this. So a little bit of an unconventional clipper. I have seen them like this, especially with these like violently dropping almost straight vertical troughs like this. But it just dips straight down into the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic. Not too intense of a storm, but it would bring likely a few inches to some folks there. And that would be around the 16th, 17th. We get another storm signal here. As we warm up into a little bit of a southeast ridge here, we get some low pressure by the Great Lakes. A stronger system down here by like Alabama. This would be a major severe weather event down here, by the way, if we saw a strong low there, so keep that in mind. We're continuing to track that as it's already been kind of a bad severe weather winter so far. They do happen, and I had a comment yesterday, I think it was such a great comment. Somebody was talking about how if we saw this pattern continue into the spring, we'd really need to watch out for severe weather outbreaks and tornado outbreaks, come March, April. And I mean, we already are having to look out for them in January. So I can't imagine if we saw a similar pattern stretch into March or April, that would be terrible. So we're going to continue to kind of monitor that situation. All our eyes are on the snowstorms, but I am kind of keeping my eyes open for severe weather as well. We see kind of along the Mississippi River area here for a little bit, and then into the Ohio Valley, we get some snowfall. It's a little bit transient, and what that means is that everything's kind of moving this way. It's not like the snow is moving kind of, if you have a storm moving like this and then all this snow is kind of just following it, you get a much longer time frame of snow. But if it's transiently moving through like to the southeast like this, you get a very quick blast of snow. So we'll see what happens with these lows if it continues doing that or kind of develops more. But I guess it kind of does because it's moving through pretty horizontally here, and then you can see it starts to get a more vertical push up the coast here by Sunday the 19th. Take this with a grain of salt. This is very far out, the 19th of January, but we do have a 991 here between Virginia and North Carolina. Snowfall stretching up and down the eastern seaboard here. Well, not the seaboard, actually, more inland areas. This would be a more interior storm. And we see that one bring quite a bit of snowfall and actually become a major low there by New England over time. So that one does become also a very major snowstorm. And then we kind of get a warmer pattern towards the end. We get more of like a cutter type storm track here where we get these storms trying to move in like this with some snowfall to the north. A little bit interesting and very, very different from the pattern we've seen. We start to develop a very potent negative PNA out west and a very potent ridge in the southeast here, which is, again, something that we haven't seen a lot of in a long time. That's it for that model, but let's take a look at the past four, including this one. This is all of these are going to be 10 p.m. on Saturday, January 11th, by the way. So they're all the exact same time. It's just all the model runs the past four that we've seen. So this is the 12Z, the one that we used in today's video at, again, 10 p.m. Saturday the 11th. Major blizzard, obviously. Eastern PA, New Jersey, New York City, southern New York in general, southern New England, and still a major snowstorm for areas stretching widely outside of that very potent area as well. Then we look at the 6Z model run, and it's like, where'd it go? This is the one right before it. So this was the one from this morning at 9:88, the same time, and look at how far it is. It's way behind. The cold air is more established. In my neck of the woods, see snowfall, so I wouldn't be too upset with this, by the way, guys. But when we look at the two before this, so here's the 0Z, the one right before it, it looks a lot more like the first one. It's not quite as tucked up against the coast, but it's a lot closer. I would say something in between, maybe. And then the one even before that, which will be the 18Z run from yesterday, might look almost identical to the model run from today's 12Z run. So I'm going to go through these rather quick. Watch the differences. Just seriously, watch the differences from run to run. Just take a moment. I'll pan back through. Let's do this one more time. These are the types of changes we're still seeing. And this storm is only about 5-6 days out, and we're seeing these huge fluctuations. That's going to happen probably for a while until we get to a point where it kind of just settles into one solution. And will that be the southern one? Will that be the more northern one, but more offshore? Will it be more tucked along the coast? There's so many differences that we could see. The one thing that stands true is the cold air is very likely to be there, and the low in some shape or form is very much so expected to be somewhere along the East Coast, probably between the Mid-Atlantic or Northeast. It's just a big question of where it really sets up. So we're getting higher confidence that there will be the storm and there will be enough cold air. Again, almost certain confidence that both those things will be true. It's just where will it set up, and how major will it be? I think intensity could vary quite a bit too, but a lot of these are very strong, at least 970s, 960s. So likely a major snowstorm coming out of this. It's just got to set up and settle in. The European model might hold some of the truth because I talked to you guys about it yesterday, but the model agreement is a big factor. And if you don't have agreement, that's a problem. That is a problem. So first snowstorm comes to an end. Again, colder, drier pattern. There's not a lot of major activity happening for days. This is the 9th. And then right on Friday the 10th, we start to see our storm developing. Again, both models have snowfall throughout these areas here, so be on the lookout for that with a Gulf coastal storm. Lots of moisture picking up. But what we're going to see from this is it looks quite a bit different. It moves very much so near the southeast / mid-Atlantic and not New England. And it is also quite a bit weaker. We do get down to 989, which is still a major low pressure system, just quite a bit weaker than the potentially 969 low pressure system. I mean, we're talking 20 millibars. That's a huge difference in intensity. We end up with quite a bit of snowfall, especially in these areas on the East Coast, but it doesn't get up into these areas where it would be much more major. So that is definitely worth noting. As we move past it, again, potential snowstorm number 3, soon to be 2 after this first one said and done, gets left behind on this model run too. The jet stream is just too far northward and they never interact enough. So we see it kind of just glide out over the southeast. We're left with very cold air here around the 16th, 17th for the East Coast. And we do actually end up in a trough in the west ridge in the east pattern as well near the 20th. But it eventually starts to warm back up over the west by the time we're reaching the 21st. And that trough tries to center itself back over the east once more. So we see us kind of revert back already by the 21st. So very short-lived there. The GFS model kind of keeps it around a lot more. Here's the total precipitation, and we do see decreasing amounts actually for the Northwest, but the four corner states are increasing here. This area where we see these 2 or maybe even 3 coastal storms originate, this area does phenomenal as far as precipitation because all the lows start to gain steam in this area. And yeah, that would just overall result in a lot of precipitation. But remember, this storm really leaves one behind, so that just kind of stays over here. And the one before it kind of just glides off the East Coast like this, not really giving any of these areas precipitation. So we end up with a drier outlook here. And if we were to show you, we'll do it real quick, but the GFS model, you can tell there's a massive difference. Huge amounts of precipitation up and down the East Coast. So that low either making it up the coast or, innocently kind of leaving off the southeast coast would make a detrimental difference, not only in snowfall, but also in total precipitation. When we look at the anomalies, this is the European model. Again, above average throughout these areas nearby Mexico, where we have a lot of our moisture and precipitation originating. Very dry along the northwest, quite dry along the east as well. But once again, we'll kind of cross compare with the GFS once again. Wrong thing. Let's see if I can find this here. Now, when we look at the anomalies, we do see above average, kind of where the European model showed it, but it does extend all the way up the East Coast. So you can tell, again, I just said this, but this one low, the difference of it moving off the southeast coast or moving up the coast makes all the difference over the entire next 16 days of precipitation pattern. So that's going to be hugely detrimental to basically all things over the next 15 days. When we look at the total snowfall in the European model, there's also going to be very, very large differences. We do have quite a bit expected over this pocket. The east, we see more for the interior really than anything. And then we get a little bit here over the mid-Atlantic from our second snowstorm, with the west looking a little underwhelming unless you're in the Rockies. I mean, Sierra Nevada, more like the southern Sierra Nevada gets some moisture, but not the northern, and then the Cascades do okay, but that's not the prettiest snowfall map I've ever seen out west. As we zoom into the east again, a little underwhelming here. You might end up with a few inches from our second snowstorm potentially this weekend if the European model solution was correct. GFS model, hugely different. And the only difference is that the low either moves up the coast on this GFS model or it moves off the southeast. I feel like I've said it 10 times now, so you guys probably get the point. But massive amounts of snowfall if the GFS model is correct. I mean, we're talking potentially feet of snowfall in this corridor if we see this low. Again, very major and hugged up along the coast, especially if it moves out like we talked about, kind of turning off the coast here. Huge. But we also showed you how much the models have been changing. So where will they settle in? This is going to be an exciting thing to pin down with you guys because, again, massive implications. Massive implications. Let's take a look at the temperatures real quickly. And really, the European model obviously has this cold over the next few days. Here's the 9th, 10th, 11th. We're really just cold along the eastern seaboard. Some warmth starts to move in, especially for the north, around the 13th here. But we get another blast of cold air there right around the 15th, 16th, maybe even more intense than the one we have now, which would bring pretty brutal cold to a lot of the east. We warm up here again, 18th, 19th, but look at how quick this cold wants to start heading back to the east. Doesn't stick around long, but we do have the west staying cold. A little bit of a toss-up there after the 20th. A little bit of a confusing time. The GFS model, we're cold until about the 13th. If you're in the north, a little warmer. But we do get this second cool down that kind of sticks around through the 16th, 17th, 18th. Another cool down for the 20th here. And then we settle into what looks like a northwest cool down. Very intense here. Very far out, though, so take it with a grain of salt. But the positive PNA kind of dies out, and we instantly rebound to warmer temperatures in the east for the end of January timeframe. No telling if it's going to last, a day or two or 7 days or 10 days, but they are trending towards some sort of warm-up around the 20th timeframe, and we will continue to monitor that with you guys. Anyway, with all that being said, be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.